Welcome to this Qur'an Gateway training video. In this video, we're going to look at the tools built into Qur'an Gateway to help you study the intertextual connections between the Quran and many of the texts and traditions from late antiquity and even earlier, especially Jewish and Christian traditions. It's been long remarked on by scholars that there are lots of connections between the Quran and this earlier body of literature, and there's a whole tool set in Qur'an Gateway to help you study them. To show you how this works, let's pull up one particular verse of the Quran that we want to take a look at. Let's pull up Surah 5, verse 110. And this is the story in the Quran of Jesus, among other things, breathing upon this clay bird and bringing it to life. And that's a story that turns up in other texts and traditions from late antiquity, and it's very easy to see those here in Qur'an Gateway. All we have to do is move our mouse pointer over here to the verse reference, and the verse tools buttons will pop up. And this little icon here that looks like a little chain, little link icon, that's the Intertextual Links button. And if we just click on that, Qur'an Gateway will show us three texts from late antiquity that also tell this same story. And we can look at the story there and compare it with what we have in the Quran and study the intertextual links between these different texts. So, for example, if we're interested in what the infancy Gospel of Thomas has to say from the mid to late 2nd century AD, we just click on the View Passage button here, and we can read this account here in chapter 2 of the infancy Gospel of Thomas and explore and think about the connections between this and the Quran. Now, as well as looking at the connections for an individual verse, we can actually browse all of the intertextual connections built into Qur'an Gateway. We have a growing database, and we plan to have several hundred eventually, but for now, if we come down here to the Browse menu and down to Intertextuality and Intertextual Connections, what we will see over here is a list of all the intertextual connections known to Qur'an Gateway right now. We have the name or the description of the source, total number of links, the references in the Quran, and the particular Quran passages in each case. And to give you an example of what we might do here, we scroll down the list towards the bottom, and we can find Jacob of Surah's Mimra on the sleepers of Ephesus. The story of the sleepers in the cave turns up in the Quran, and that's a legend that can be found also in the text of late antiquity. And suppose we want to have a look at what's going on. We just scroll over here, move the mouse over here, click on the little icon here, and we can once again pop open Jacob's version of that story, and we can read it through, find out what's going on, and when we finished here, again we can just come back very easily to over to Surah 18 and read the same story there in the Quran, and again have a think about what's going on in terms of the relationship between those two texts. As with so much in Qur'an Gateway, you can also explore intertextual connections graphically in chart form. We've got two charts that let you do that. Under the Charts menu, if you come down to Intertextuality, the first thing we might want to look at is the number of verses with intertextual connections per surah. And again, you can just see how some surahs have a very high number of these intertextual connections. And if we want to explore what's going on in any particular surah, let's say we're perhaps interested over here, what's going on in Surah 37, where there are 10 such connections, we just have to click on that chart bar on the graph there, and it draws right down and shows us the verses in Surah 37 that have some kind of connection. And of course, if we want to see exactly what's going on, simply point our pointer at the verse reference, click on the little link icon, and we can see, okay, what's going on here is a connection between this surah and the Quran and the book of Jonah and the Hebrew Old Testament and the Bible. And the second chart we have as well that's really quite interesting. Under Intertextuality, we can look at the number of intertextual links per source. And in this case, along the bottom of the chart, we have all the different intertextual sources currently known to Qur'an Gateway, and then for each chart, the number of links between them and the Quran that turn up across the pages of the Quran. And again, if we want to drill down into anything and see what's going on, perhaps we're interested in the Book of the Cave of Treasures here, that famous Syriac document. Again, we just have to click on the bar there, and we can pull up the passages in the Quran that have some kind of connection to the Book of the Cave of Treasures. And finally, the very last thing we can do, the search language built into Qur'an Gateway knows about intertextual connection. So if you want to find every verse in the Quran, for example, that has an intertextual connection, we just have to search for intertexts, and in this case we're going to say greater than 0, and press enter. I'll click on the search button. Here we are, currently 267 verses that have some kind of intertextual connection. And by building this tool into Qur'an Gateway, we hope this is just yet one more area of Quranic scholarship that Qur'an Gateway will help you explore with more rigour and more detail. and we'll be adding to the number of links we're tracking and recording over time. So that's Intertextuality in Qur'an Gateway. Hope you find it helpful.